We go.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, October 2nd, 2020. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a lot to talk about today. I'm going to try and catch up with some of the news that got sort of ignored and abandoned earlier in the week here. So we're going to hold off opening the phone lines until at least the bottom half of the hour. And of course, in hour number 2, the lovely Lady Claire will be joining us with her unique perspective on the world here. Obviously, the big news today is that President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania have both tested positive for COVID-19. Apparently, one of their staffers, Hope Hicks, came down with the illness. Was traveling with them on one of their campaign trips on Air Force One, and they tried to isolate her on Air Force One, but it didn't really take. And so now everybody's trying to find out how long Trump has had this, how many other people he's possibly exposed. Joe Biden and Chris Wallace may have been exposed during Tuesday's debate here. So the news has just been totally focused on this all day long here, with all kinds of doctors and medical experts weighing in and basically saying that they caught it early. The symptoms are very, very mild. Doctors are recommending zinc treatments and remdesivir, or whatever they call it. I forget how it's pronounced. They're talking about recommending that here. One of the most disgusting things about all of this is seeing all the Democrats out on social media who are literally dancing with joy that the president has come down ill. And I think it betrays sort of the culture of the Democratic Party that they would behave this way, because, you know, you don't want to see anybody get sick with any disease, let alone COVID-19. And you don't celebrate and take joy in the fact that somebody has come down ill. And, you know, it really does paint a very dim picture of the Democratic personality, if you will, as to what's going on here. Now, a lot of people have wrote in about this. Some are out there saying this was done deliberately to get Trump out of the campaign in these last few weeks before the election here. Others are saying maybe the president and Hope Hicks and the First Lady are the victims of the many false positives we've seen these tests produce. But it is reported they are showing mild symptoms. But then again, given that the COVID-19 test will show positive for any coronavirus, they could be down with the common cold. Anyway, Donald Trump tweeted out, "We're going to get through this together." They're self-isolating inside the White House residence. Melania Trump tweeted out saying, "We are feeling good." And they're basically hunkered down there in the White House. So a lot of people are now out there saying, was Trump a super spreader? And they're looking at the web of contacts the president has met over the last 7 days, including 8 flights, 2 helicopter rides, 3 rallies, 1 presidential debate, and hardly any masks. And so you have, again, a lot of these social media Democrats are out there saying, well, it's your own darn fault. You should have taken this more seriously. And again, the joy is uncontained, as it were. Now, Vice President Pence and his wife have tested negative for coronavirus. So has Joe and Jill Biden. And they're already talking about the possibility that Vice President Pence could take over the duties of the presidency under the 25th Amendment if Trump becomes incapacitated from COVID. Now, remember, he's in that age bracket where he's at greater risk for complications from COVID-19 than the general population. And according to this article I'm looking at that came from Domagood.com, they're saying it could even be that the GOP has to pick a replacement candidate if the president becomes too ill before the election. I think that's really going on out there and painting the dragon on the wall. I think he's going to shake this. I'm sure he's got the very best doctors in the country working on him right now. Getting out to the more general political view, Hawaii's crazy Mazie Hirono is out there saying, I want the Democrats to take back the Senate so we can have a serious discussion about court reform. So basically yesterday when she was on MSNBC Live, Senator Mazie Hirono stressed the importance of Democrats taking back the Senate so they can talk about reforming the Supreme Court and, packing the court. enlarging the number of justices and then appointing a bunch of liberals to offset the current majority conservative justices that are sitting on the bench there. Apparently, the Democrats have formally requested that the confirmation of Judge Amy Coney Barrett be put off until after January's inauguration. So we'll see what's going to happen from that. Mazie Hirono suggested rotating circuit judges, limiting the years a Supreme Court justice can serve as part of a number of things court reform would entail. I am actually not that resistant to the idea that there should be a term limit or an age limit on Supreme Court justices because with all due respect to the justices, as they do get on in years, we have to worry about their mental faculties and whether they can still perform or not. Now, sometimes justices will retire, and a lot of people are very upset that Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't retire during the Obama administration, which would have allowed him to nominate a liberal judge to the bench here. Okay, U.S. District Judge William Osteen has halted an effort by the Democrat-headed North Carolina State Board of Elections to eliminate the requirement that voters have a witness sign their mail-in ballots. Now, one can only speculate why the Democrats want to get rid of the requirement of a witness signature on the mail-in ballots, but I think it's to basically make it easier and less work to fake a bunch of them. So, as Raleigh, North Carolina NBC affiliate WRAL noted, Judge Osteen, who was a George Bush appointee, was concerned the state board was going around existing law. All righty, getting on into protests and wokeness and the rest of it. Police investigating Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend as part of a drugs probe were repeatedly told that she was no longer receiving suspicious packages for him at her home, but they still listed it in their search warrant and raided it. Taylor was shot and killed as 3 cops returned fire on her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, who thought they were burglars during the March raid. Now it's come on out that the Louisville Police Forensics Lab couldn't identify or confirm that Kenneth Walker shot that police officer. There had been rumors that it was actually a friendly fire, that Kenneth Walker fired a shot that missed everybody. The other police opened fire and accidentally hit one of their own. Anyway, tragic situation here, but again, it's looking less and less like the police should have been there in the first place. Out in California, thanks to a bill signed into law Wednesday by Governor Gavin Newsom, the state of California will study reparations to Black Americans. Assembly Bill 3121 will create a 9-member task force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans, with a special consideration for African Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. Now, here's the wrinkle to show you just how weird California has gotten out there. California was admitted to the Union in 1850 as a free state. They have never had legal slavery in that state. And now Governor Newsom and his legislature are ready to penalize law-abiding Californians for crimes that were never committed within their state borders here. All right, I want to talk a little bit about Azerbaijan and Armenia. I know Claire's going to cover this an awful lot in hour number 2. And by the way, if anybody there listening is from Azerbaijan or Armenia, hour number 2 is when you should call on in and give us your perspective on what's going on here. But Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev says his country will keep fighting until Armenian forces fully withdraw from the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region, as tensions continue between the two South Caucasus neighbors. We have only one condition, Aliyev said on Wednesday. Armenian armed forces must unconditionally, fully, and immediately leave our lands, saying if the Armenian government fulfills the demand, fighting and bloodshed will end and peace will be established in the region. Scores of deaths have been reported in the fighting over the past days, with Yerevan and Baku continuing to accuse one another of being responsible for the recent escalation in violence. Okay. President Macron in France says that Syrian jihadist fighters are operating in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region, citing credible information. Now, yesterday we reported Syrian fighters had actually been killed in the region. That's pretty credible information right there. But apparently militants from extremist groups previously active in Syria have arrived in Nagorno-Karabakh amid the ongoing military conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Macron said, now we have credible information which indicates Syrian fighters from some jihadi groups have reached the Nagorno-Karabakh battlefield through Gaziantep. My mistake. Macron told journalists as he arrived at an EU summit in Brussels. All right. The Nagorno-Karabakh fighting spreads. Yerevan says it shot down an Azeri drone near the capital as airstrike kills a man inside Armenia. So the fighting has spread beyond the borders of Nagorno-Karabakh, and it's now directly into both Armenia and Azerbaijan. All right, the leaders of the European Union countries are now calling for a cessation of hostilities in Nagorno-Karabakh. Renewed clashes between Armenia and Azerbaijani forces have been underway since Sunday, with both sides accusing each other of aggression. The two subsequently announced the marshalling of their respective forces, with Baku declaring partial mobilization and Yerevan full mobilization. Fighting continued in Nagorno-Karabakh as both sides published numerous videos of enemy aircraft and military vehicles destroyed during the clashes. Russia, France, and many other countries have called on Armenia and Azerbaijan to cease the hostilities and return to negotiations, while Turkey is supporting Baku, promising aid in talks and in combat, warning that any aggressions against Azerbaijan is an attack against Ankara. So leave it to Erdogan to keep things rolling along here. Russia and Turkey talk the Azeri-Armenian conflict and agree on coordination in addressing the ongoing flare-up between Azerbaijan and Armenia. They're agreeing on coordination on their efforts towards stabilization of the situation in the region. The Russian Foreign Ministry reported that the discussion had taken place on Thursday during a telephone conversation between Sergei Lavrov and Mevlut Cavusoglu. It said both the officials confirmed readiness for close coordination of the actions of Russia and Turkey to stabilize the situation with the aim of returning the settlement of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict to the channel of peaceful talks. All righty, now the United States is going to base a massive naval ship in Greece near disputed waters. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said last Tuesday that the U.S. will be basing a massive Navy ship in Suda Bay, a joint U.S.-Greek military base on Greece's island of Crete. The move could be seen as a symbolic show of support from the U.S. for Greece in its maritime spat with Turkey. It's certainly going to complicate things with Armenia and Azerbaijan, I think. Turkey and Greece are locked in a dispute over the resource-rich waters of the eastern Mediterranean Sea and the Aegean Sea. In August, Turkey sent a research vessel accompanied by warships to waters over which Greece claims exclusive rights. Athens responded by sending warships of its own, which led to a tense standoff between the NATO allies. The USS Herschel Woody Williams that is being deployed to Suda Bay is an expeditionary sea-based ship. This is not the type of ship the U.S. would deploy to intervene if a highly intensive conflict broke out between Ankara and Athens, but the timing of moving the vessel to Crete is sending a clear signal to Turkey. All right. Trump is conditioning removal of Sudan sanctions on recognizing Israel. Sudanese activists took to social media on Saturday in an online campaign against normalization with Israel after reports on Friday emerged of a possible normalization deal between Sudan and Israel next week. The campaign denounced the use of the Palestinian cause as a bargaining chip in efforts to remove Sudan from the U.S. terror list, saying it would not accumulate into any real positive economic change in the ground. The activists also called normalization with Israel as a stab in the back of Palestinian brethren, saying the cause is priceless. The move comes as reports suggest Sudan could become the next Arab country to officially form diplomatic relations with Israel after the U.S. hinted at more Arab countries joining accords struck between the Jewish state and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. All right. China is now accusing India of an illegal move to change Ladakh's status as a border standoff continues. China last Tuesday described India's designation of the region along their disputed border as a Union territory, an illegal move, and voiced new objections to infrastructure construction that seemed to strengthen India's position in the area. Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin also said that reports of new Chinese military bases and other facilities being built on its side were totally untrue and had ulterior motives. Senior commanders agreed earlier this month not to add more troops along their fast militarizing disputed border in the mountainous Ladakh region, but appear to have made no progress in disengaging their forces from the ongoing standoff, despite previous commitments to do so. Okay, down in South America, or Central America, Secretary of State Michael Pompeo and Colombian President Ivan Duque, meeting in Bogota on September 20th, talked about managing the COVID-19 response, narco traffickers, and Maduro's illegitimate regime, according to the State Department. A Cuban observer insists they explored when to begin military actions and sabotage in Venezuela. Elliot Abrams, the White House official responsible for Venezuelan affairs, dismissed the idea of U.S. military engagement as an absurdity, which tells me they're seriously considering it here. Okay, over in Kashmir, tensions are escalating as 2 Indian soldiers have killed and 4 wounded in cross-border fire. The Indian Defense Ministry informed Parliament Pakistan had breached ceasefire agreements 3,428 times this year, leaving 10 security personnel dead, dozens injured. Countering the charges, the Pakistani army accused India of committing 2,158 ceasefire violations that resulted in the deaths of 17 civilians. Okay, now the Air Force, in case you're wondering where all that money's been going that the Pentagon won't admit to, the U.S. Air Force has revealed that a new stealth fighter prototype has been secretly built and flown. And this is potentially going to replace the F-22 Raptor, or maybe even the unreliable F-35 Lightning II. There's this new stealth jet that could potentially dominate the skies by 2030. Air Force acquisition head Will Roper recently spoke with Defense News and said that the jet, built under the Air Force's Next Generation Air Dominance program, could enter production pretty fast. He said, "We are ready to go and build the next generation aircraft in a way that's never happened before." Well, there's maybe one of the reasons we've been seeing all this UFO stuff in the media and the independent media. So when you see that new prototype whiz by, you think it's an alien spaceship here. All right, the United States Army has received the first of 2 Iron Dome batteries, but it's unlikely to buy any more. And it received the first of the batteries from Israel Wednesday, just over a year after signing a purchase agreement. Now, the sticking point is that the original purchase agreement included the source code for the control system for the Iron Dome battery. Israel has gone back on that agreement, and because of that, the U.S. Army is saying they're not going to buy any more of those systems. Okay. Turning to the economic news here, U.S. stock futures sink as much as 2% as the Dow plunges more than 350 points, and global equities drop after President Trump catches COVID-19. It was kind of a rocky day on the stock market. They got close to breaking even toward the end there. Meanwhile, there's an explosion of bankruptcies and layoffs in the United States. It's like anything we have ever seen before. The cryptos crashed after BitMEX founders and execs face CFTC charges. Gold and iron ore are up, oil is down. Disney is getting ready to lay off 28,000 employees in California and Florida because the coronavirus has just absolutely killed attendance at their amusement parks. 28,000, that's about 1/4 of the employees at the various Disney amusement parks. So that's a huge, huge hit. Now, a little bit of good news. Stanley Black & Decker is investing $90 million to shift more Craftsman production back to the United States. They're building a new facility in Fort Worth, 425,000 square foot, where tools ranging from sockets, ratchets, wrenches to general sets will be produced. So the jobs are starting to come back, just not fast enough. Okay, a Kushner-linked firm and the gig economy set to reap huge profits as mass evictions begin. And back in 2014, former Blackstone and Goldman Sachs investment banker Ryan Williams got together with his college buddy, Kushner, Joshua Kushner, to form a real estate investment platform they call Cadre. All right, we got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. And folks, Republic Broadcasting needs you. And we need you to keep supporting us so that we can keep doing what we're doing. We don't have any large corporations or conservative billionaires pouring money all over us. We're on a shoestring budget. Our control room is held together with duct tape and baling wire. And we're just barely getting by. And we get it by because of your generosity. And so thanks to all of you who have already donated. And for those of you who have not, shame on you. And if you would like to be granted absolution for your neglect of the network, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. Getting on back to the economic news here, Steve Mnuchin and the GOP say they will negotiate with Democrats' new $2.2 trillion COVID package that includes a second round of 1,200 stimulus checks, 600 in extra unemployment, and $225 billion for schools. Now, the House of Representatives has already passed their version of this bill. It's going to the Senate. The sticking point is that Nancy Pelosi wants money to bail out democratically run cities that have run themselves into bankruptcy. And the Republicans are saying no, that we're not going to tax ordinary American people to make up for what were basically bad political decisions here. So Mnuchin is saying the stimulus checks are going to be out there for the American people. And basically, it'll be for people who are earning under $75,000 a year or $150,000 for married couples. They'll receive, the full $1,200 or $2,400 for the married couples, $500 per dependent. Those who are earning more than $99,000 or $198,000 for married couples will not receive the benefit checks. It doesn't look like they need them anyway. Okay, China pork reserves at risk of running out in months as prices soar. Now, you probably remember not too long ago, China was hit by the African swine fever, and they were having to destroy huge numbers of pigs, and it's created a shortage. And China could be on the brink of exhausting its massive frozen pork reserves as the country's pig herd is wiped out. Declining reserves are particularly bad news for the Communist Party of China, which is worried that it might not be able to prevent another destabilizing surge in prices. Okay, some 3,500 U.S. companies are suing the Trump administration over the Chinese tariffs. And these companies include Tesla, Ford Motor Company, Target Corp, Walgreens, Home Depot, and they've sued the Trump administration in the last 2 weeks over the imposition of tariffs on more than $300 billion worth of Chinese-made goods. Turning to immigration and naturalization, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement is prepping for a major operation in many sanctuary cities. Trump's administration is planning to launch an immigrant enforcement operation next month, specifically pointing at American cities that have adopted sanctuary policies. Well, it's about time, actually. The Immigration and Customs Enforcement operation could begin later this week in California before being extended to other cities, including Denver and Philadelphia. Now, France is out there demanding that every European Union country be forced to take in a share of illegal immigrants arriving on European soil. Speaking to France Inter on Wednesday, Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin asserted that the migration question can only be settled at the European level and that every EU nation must share the burden of resettling third world migrants. Darmanin said, "We still want a European solidarity. There's no reason why only Italy, France, and Germany, broadly speaking, with Greece, share this solidarity." All right. The European Commission still does not understand the solution to illegal migration, the Czech Prime Minister Babis says after a new policy announcement. Babis has rejected the new EU migration policy proposal, calling parts of it nonsense. Brussels wants countries to admit relocated asylum seekers and also to pay for sending them back home. At first glance, it seems like the European Commission still does not understand that the solution to illegal migration is to stop the illegal migrants when they arrive on European soil, which certainly makes a lot of sense to me. Okay. Julian Assange, his extradition hearing has come to a close, but we're not expecting a decision until next spring. But the illegal and unwarranted prosecution of Julian Assange by the U.S. government in a British court, Star Chamber, it's a prosecution of the First Amendment. It will prevent journalists in the future from informing the public of criminal activity by the government. This is already the case in a number of countries, and the U.S. and Britain are about to join them. Washington, working through a British judge and a British prosecutor, is murdering the First Amendment. All right, we're going to take another break for commercials. We'll start taking phone calls after these two words from our sponsors. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about Julian Assange, and apparently a big part of the U.S. case against Julian Assange is a claim that he was tried to crack passwords into government databases, that he assisted somebody else in doing that, which would definitely put him in violation of the Espionage Act. But apparently, that whole argument has pretty much fallen apart. And apparently, at the end of the third week of the extradition trial, allegations related to this were entirely discredited by Patrick Eller, who was a command digital forensic examiner responsible for a team of more than 80 examiners at the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Command headquarters in Quantico. And apparently they had an anonymous witness detailed an alleged CIA plot to kill Julian Assange. All right, we're going to open the phone lines now, 800-313-9443, and we're going to take a phone call from Seth in Oklahoma. Hello, Seth. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
It's an honor to speak with you, sir. I just say thank you for everything you've done. All wars are bankers' wars. I mean, it was an amazing piece that you made, and I mean, it changed my life. I mean, it was very good work. And when this is all said and done with, my history books, I mean, you'll go down. I don't know. Just thank you for everything you've done, sir, very, very much. And
well, thank you very much. I'm not looking forward to seeing my name in the history books. In fact, I rather doubt I'll be around to read them.
Well, yeah, I think none of us will be, but hopefully our children will. And
they'll raise statues to me, and the pigeons of the world shall rejoice.
Well, there's nobody else like you, sir. I mean,
thank you. That's probably a good thing.
Yeah, if we had more people like you, I don't know if they would. I don't know, but it's pretty bad where we're at. The state of the country is, or the world, I guess, for that matter. But I had one more thing else to say, that I've been doing this CE5. I'm totally off the thing. I know you're an atheist and you don't believe in God or whatnot. But I have been doing. I've for 10 years now. I pray and meditate for peace on earth and no more starvation, and everybody gets together and no more war. And I pray to God, and I see stuff. I know it sounds crazy, and I know you don't like to touch the subject at all on your radio station. But it's just, if it's okay, I would like to email you my stuff that But I pray and meditate, and my children see it. We see it every night. But I would like to email you if that's okay with you.
Sure.
And with that, that's fine. Okay. Well, I'll email it to you. And thank you again, sir. And God bless you and Claire.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the kind words, and thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Sebastian in Sweden. Hello, Sebastian. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Oh, hello, Mike. Wow, I saw I had to wait a while. Hey, listen, no, you were talking about the immigration earlier, about Italy and France, I think, and Germany. And let's not forget Sweden. Let me tell you, I came here in 1970. And it was zero. The Muslim population here was 0.20%. Today, 2020, it is 20%. So we're having it's just everywhere in this country. And and the government puts them out in small communities. And there's one community that there was an ice cream truck, and the kids circled the ice cream truck and wouldn't let it, and they wanted to get all that ice cream free. And then the next day, the people the morning paper, who give out the morning paper, they stole his car. I mean, it's everywhere, and they call this place Little Mogadishu, and it's in a landscape called Dalarna, like a state called Dalarna. And Dalarna is where the Swedish horse, if you heard about that, the Dalarna horse, the famous carved horse comes from.
Yes.
But anyway, it's like 80 bombings this year, and apartment buildings, car bombings. It's on and on and on, and it's just getting worse. So I hope Sweden doesn't take any more. We have enough now. We don't want any more immigrants, and they're living off the welfare, and they're trying to buck the system about skimming in payrolls. They're in some forms of government.
Mm-hmm.
They got into government, so they're giving out the welfare checks now, and it's just it just goes on and on and on, and people are really sick of it. And it's and now they had this Dane that came up with the Quran, and now it's caught on here, and they were using the Quran as a football, because in Sweden we do have freedom of expression, and it's not in the law you have a right to do anything with a book, regardless if it's a Bible or, unfortunately I don't like it, holy books, but it's just, it's got to stop. I don't mind it anymore. First I didn't like it. I said, that's a holy book, but I mean, they're doing so much to this country. It's just terrible. And it's just getting bad. And I feel sorry for Donald Trump and his wife getting the corona. I hope it doesn't hinder the election. But another thing I want to talk about is real quick. I think there are a lot of people that immigrated from California to Texas, and also from New York to Florida. So Tom in Florida, and the people in Texas, I think it's going to be a problem. They're trying to swing those two states now. They're trying to make them, what do you call it, blues, completely different from Europe. Blue states. Yeah, but the different. The blue in Europe means conservative, and red means like Communist Party in Europe. It means completely opposite. Yeah, but I hope that doesn't happen. Okay, you and Claire, have a nice weekend. Take care of yourselves.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. Getting on back to the news, we're talking about Julian Assange. Apparently, this high-profile extradition hearing of Julian Assange blocked human rights groups from monitoring the trial here. And Julia Hall, an expert on criminal justice and human rights for Amnesty International, revealed that her organization was denied entry despite their repeated requests to be recognized as fair trial monitors. I wonder what they're trying to hide there. Apparently, there was a whitehouse.gov petition to pardon Julian Assange. That's been blocked by Facebook. You can't mention that on Facebook. They'll take it down. There's several petitions actually out there to free Julian Assange. All righty. Now then, getting on over to corporate media here, Netflix is experiencing a huge backlash for their release of the film Cuties. Now, despite winning a film festival award, the movie about a dance troupe of twerking 11-year-olds did not sit well with the American audience. And Netflix is feeling the brunt of the outrage from angry subscribers and catching bipartisan flack from the nation's elected leaders. Apparently, a lot of customers are canceling their subscriptions because of this. And I can understand why. I mean, maybe that sort of thing is acceptable over in France, but here in the United States, with all the attention that's being focused on pedophilia and other such sick behavior, I can understand why Netflix people are very upset. So after Netflix premiered Cuties, Cancel Netflix, hashtag Cancel Netflix began trending on Twitter and other social media platforms, and the pushback from infuriated Americans caused a massive decline in subscriptions. Reports are circulating that Netflix lost $9 billion in market value since the hashtag went viral. People are starting to reassert American values on corporate media, and I think that's a good thing here. Okay, over in San Francisco, residents are on high alert as home invasions spike 42%. There's a spate of brazen break-ins throughout the city, according to KPIX5, which notes that burglaries in the city were up 42% in the first 9 months of the year versus the same period in 2019. One San Francisco neighborhood saw a 75% increase in burglaries. Thieves used to target tourists for smash and grabs, but now they seem to be stealing goods and money from residents' homes, with few travelers coming to the city. There have been 5,118 break-ins at homes and businesses from January 1st through September 20th. That's a 42% increase over the same time period last year, when there were 3,602 burglaries, according to crime data collected by the San Francisco Police Department. Okay. Now, we mentioned this before, but we're going to mention it again because I have a question to ask. California Governor Newsom has announced a ban on all gasoline-powered cars by 2035. He wants everybody driving electric vehicles. Here's the problem. California's electric utilities are struggling just to keep up with current demand. They're having rolling blackouts out there. What's going to happen when everybody's got an electric car they're plugging in to recharge overnight? So Newsom obviously was not thinking this all the way through. It's a pander to the environmental wackos, and it sounds good, but there are some practical issues unless they start going back to building some more power utilities here. I mean, they're trying to do everything on solar cells and windmills, and you know, the irresistible force has hit the immovable object, and something's going to have to give here. Okay, now let's see. The Department of Justice is nearing an antitrust action on Google. Trump is eyeing a tech curb. The Trump administration moves toward antitrust action against search giant Google. It's campaigning to enlist support from sympathetic state attorneys generals across the country. Trump pushed his campaign against big tech, touting curbs on legal protections for social media platforms he denounces as biased against conservative views. Okay, we're going to take a phone call now from Al in Canada. Hello, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Al, are you there? There you are.
Yep, I am now.
Okay.
Yep. I heard the almost like flushing me down the toilet.
Well, it's a signal to let the caller know they're on the air.
Yep. You were just talking about that disgraceful thing there, that filthy film from France.
Cuties. Yeah.
I was almost going to say cooties, but it's cuties. Just still thinking of this COVID thing. And anyway, yeah, that was a couple of weeks ago, and when that came out, a friend of mine called me because I don't have Netflix. I don't use any of that nonsense. And he told me about it, and I said, "Yeah, I know. I've already heard. You know, I was reading about it like a day before or something." He said, "I canceled Netflix. That's disgusting." He went into this big long rant, swearing rant about these pedophiles. So because incrementally they try to normalize this sort of behavior, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what they do. So actually, Netflix they lost over $9 billion in market share. Well, not market share, and
company value.
What do they call it? Company value. It's all crapple anyway. It doesn't mean anything. The more they print, the funny thing is, Mike, now they can just print this cash, create it out of thin air and put it pretty much anywhere they want, right?
Yes.
So, what does market share mean? It doesn't mean anything. And then yesterday I was talking to you about MSG, that they put it as a preservative or something like that in vaccinations. And it was a while since I've looked this stuff up, but now I'm looking at it. And so MSG is an excitotoxin.
Okay.
And it actually will force your neurons to fire rapidly to the point where they just burn out.
Okay.
Yeah, because yesterday you said you were talking about aspartame. Well, aspartame's kind of the same thing.
Yes.
Does the same sort of thing, right?
Yes.
So, this stuff, Jesus. And then, of course, there are so many other side effects of MSG and all this nonsense they're putting in these shots that they stick in your arm. Even, you know what, Mike? I know someone that's doing chemo right now for that Monsanto glyphosate nonsense, right?
Yes.
He's 76, and he has that. He has that cancer. Now,
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yeah, and with him, it's not life-threatening as long as he keeps doing chemo. But what happened to him a couple of weeks ago is when they went to put the needle in his arm. What they did was, what the hell did they do? Oh, no, it was something else. He had another shot. It was another shot for something else. I can't remember what it was, but it was kind of like a flu shot or it was some kind of vaccination, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was supposed to go into a muscle, and they hit a vein, and they pumped it right into his bloodstream. He didn't die, but he almost did. He almost did. He came really close to it. He's an older fella.
Yeah.
And of course, he's kind of weak now because he's doing chemo like 3 times a year now. So for six he goes on these 6 week stints.
Yeah.
Because of the glyphosate. Well, he's a farmer, right?
Yes.
Anyway, so there you go. It's like I said a long, long time ago. Anytime anyone has a needle put in them, there is always a risk.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what's inside of it. There's a risk. That's just the way it is. So anyway, after this happened, Mike,
mm-hmm.
They actually decided to put in one of those shunt things in his arm for
his
his chemo.
Stent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they screwed up, and he's complained about some of these nurses they can't find a vein, so they're poking them all over the place. Blah 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 blah. Anyway, that's all I have to say. It just goes to show you, Mike, healthcare isn't much better up here than it is down there, except it's quicker
and cheaper.
Up there, down where you are, it's quicker.
It's quicker, but it's cheaper up where you are. All right. Well, thank you very much.
For the phone. Is it cheaper?
Well, I don't know.
We don't have doctors making $3 or $4 million a year, right?
Yeah.
So
all right. Well,
I mean, yeah, thanks
I'm
a
going
lot,
to have
Mike.
to let you go. We got a commercial break coming up here, and getting up to the top of the hour, and the lovely Lady Claire. So we'll be right back after these few words. And welcome back to our show here. Article over in Land Destroyer Blogspot. Nations should begin removing Facebook, Twitter, and Google from their information space. And it says legal options are a start. The ultimate goal should be replacing Facebook, Twitter, and Google with local alternatives like Russia, China, and many other nations are already doing. And I guess they're just not very happy about American mega corporations deciding that they're going to control what people are seeing here. All right, we're going to go back to the phones. Glenn in Philadelphia. Hello, Glenn. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, I noticed you had the one caller calling in who was expressing his gratitude and praising you for your unique perspective. And, absolutely, there's no doubt they definitely broke the mold before they made you, Mike.
Yes, they did.
But I wanted to chime in about the Chinese tariffs.
Yes.
I'm a little dismayed that our techno-oligarchs are against tariffs. Tariffs are standard operating procedure throughout the world in international trade, and they serve a purpose in keeping up domestic employment and production and wages and that sort of thing. And they can also function as a sanction sort of with China, a protest of their abysmal treatment of their workers. We've had a pretty hands-off policy in terms of human rights in China in recent decades. I mean, you have to kind of go back to even the Nixon era in the 70s when they started to normalize relations with China, but still upheld protests about human rights issues. Today, nobody even touches that at all.
Okay.
Xi Jinping can get away with like whatever he wants, and if our techno oligarchs get us to stand down from tariffs, it's going to hurt our jobs. It's going to hurt our productivity, and it's not going to make any point with China about human rights issues. So I'm not quite sure what Elon Musk or anybody else's objections are relative to the Chinese tariff issue.
Okay, well, I know there's been a big stink about China's treatment of the Muslims, so it's not like they're getting a complete clean slate on any of this.
Right. They sort of have to acknowledge it. I mean, the Uyghur Muslims in camps and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of them are treated pretty much like the way they treat the Falun Gong or Christians, and organ harvesting and all that sort of thing. So, it's but our objections are tepid at best. Gee, I wish we could do that. Okay.
Well, that's because we're too dependent on China for manufactured goods, and I think probably it would be a good idea for us to become less dependent on China, which, of course, is part of the Trump platform. And Biden's apparently hopping on board that now, saying that he wants America's future to be made in America. So I that's one area where both the candidates seem to be in agreement.
Well, yeah, hopefully, yeah. There have been some stories, in recent years about China warehousing a surplus goods that they couldn't export.
Okay, I'm going to have to let you go. We got to take a break.
Take care.
All right, we're going to take a break for station identification and back with the lovely Lady Claire after these few words. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2, and we're going to close the phone lines after this next phone call from Layla in Canada. Hello, Layla. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today? Hello? Layla dropped. All right, well, then we're going to close the phone lines for a while here. Okay. For those of you watching on YouTube, this gorgeous creature sitting next to me is the lovely Lady Claire, who likes to join us on hour number 2 every Friday with her unique perspective on the world. And I understand that you have a specific subject that you're in high dudgeon about.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I think it is possibly one of the most concerning stories that most people haven't heard of here in the U.S., unless they go to the English language edition of Russian or Iranian press that's still allowed.
Or they listen to Republic Broadcasting.
Yes, or they do that. Apparently, we have a situation between Azerbaijan and Armenia where war started last Sunday. And I want to give you all some of the backstory and about what is going on today in the very long disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh. Now, this particular flare-up, it's over a territorial dispute, and it risks escalating into a major regional war. And let me explain to you why. Here we've got 2 former Soviet republics locked into a conflict rooted in feuds that are just generations old. Now, the current ongoing hostilities started on September 27th, becoming one of the most serious in a series of border clashes that have been occurring in the region on a fairly regular basis. The parties are fighting over Nagorno-Karabakh, which is a mountainous region located inside Azerbaijan, as recognized internationally, and some surrounding territories. Now, Baku, Azerbaijan, claims sovereignty on these based on borders set during the Soviet era and asserts that they have been occupied by Armenia. Now, Yerevan, which is the capital of Armenia, supports the predominantly Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh in their bid for independence. Now, there was an horrific bloody war against Azerbaijan in the 90s. Now, Nagorno-Karabakh is among those places in the world where there is no really historically correct evidence on whose claims are actually stronger. It was always too distant and difficult to control for any particular power to become dominant in ethnicity or regions.
Religion.
Armenians and Azeris have been living there in a patchwork of settlements with a lot of old axes to grind. Now, the Russian Empire absorbed the region in the early 19th century after a war with Iran, but its goals were limited to preventing growing Armenian and Azeri nationalism from boiling over. After the Bolshevik Revolution at the beginning of the 20th century, a full-fledged war started. The Soviets got involved with their own agenda to retake control of the region and supported the territorial claims of the Azeris. Now, the reason was largely down to the Bolsheviks' desire for Turkey to eventually embrace communism. The Turks and Armenians were sworn enemies, and Joseph Stalin feared upsetting Constantinople, then the capital, by giving Yerevan the land that was desired by Baku. Thus, Nagorno-Karabakh ended up as an autonomous region of Soviet Azerbaijan. And when the USSR fell apart, disintegrated, it led to a repetition of the exact same scenario. In 1998, the authorities of Nagorno-Karabakh, which remained predominantly Armenian in ethnic makeup despite Azerbaijani administration, petitioned Moscow to have their lands transferred to Armenia. Well, Moscow said "Niet." And so tensions mounted, escalating into a full-fledged war in 1991. And that was fought between independent Azerbaijan and the self-proclaimed Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, backed by Armenia. Now, that puppy lasted until May of 1994 and claimed an estimated 15,000 to 25,000 lives on both sides, also forcing hundreds to flee. I mean, this was nasty, Mike.
It was thousands, hundreds of thousands to flee.
Yeah. And the truce signed then with Russia's mediation left Nagorno-Karabakh in control of most of the territory it held as part of Azerbaijan, plus large swathes of land connecting it to Armenia and to Iran, and a small portion on the Azeri side. What were they thinking? Let's go to the present day. And apparently, Armenia's S-300 missiles are active over Yerevan as a protection, as Azerbaijan is stepping up suicide drone use. And the war between these two areas appears to be spinning out into a broader conflict, as we're seeing footage of increasingly heavy and advanced military hardware appearing. Now, as late as yesterday, there are reports that Armenia's Russian-supplied S-300 systems are active near the capital of Yerevan, Armenia. There are new viral videos circulating on military channels purporting to show the S-300 missiles intercepting a possible enemy drone or inbound rocket right near the capital. That's got to be scary for those people, Mike. Footage from Armenian shoulders shows the moment when an Azerbaijani IAI Harap loitering munition, also called suicide
Gotta watch
drone.
out for those musicians.
Yes, they're terrible.
Okay.
Target what was claimed to be a troop transport bus in Vardanis, Armenia. Now, amazingly enough, and you wouldn't think this for little Azerbaijan, they've got a very sophisticated drone program. And they have been supplied for years by Israeli defense firms, including so-called kamikaze drones. Now, these suicide drones appear to be in use right now by Azerbaijan's army, and Armenia has just recalled their ambassador from Israel over Azeri weapon sales. And apparently, Israel is providing Azerbaijan with about 60% of its weapons. I wonder where the other 40% is coming from, Mike. What do you think?
You know, black market, U.S., Russia,
Yeah.
Iran, who knows?
The usual suspects.
Yes.
And the fighting continues. The fighting is getting worse. And an Armenian foreign spokeswoman said that the ambassador was recalled in protest of Israel's supply of ultra-modern weapons to Azerbaijan. Now, apparently, Israel and Azerbaijan are major trading partners with weapons and other things. Now, Hikmet Hajayev, the assistant to the president of Azerbaijan, told Israeli media on Wednesday that Azeri forces are definitely, he confirmed that Azeri forces are using attack drones in Nagorno-Karabakh. And Hajayev said that the Azeris are very appreciative of cooperation with Israel, especially with defense. Now, what has been noted by plane spotters is that Azeri cargo planes have been spotted landing at an Israeli Air Force base this week. And it's kind of a common thing for these planes to come and go. But the frequency and the timing indicate that what's happening is that the Israelis are supplying more weapons for Azerbaijan right now, as we speak. And the conflict here has never really been resolved, only frozen, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So the resumption of hostilities didn't come up out of the blue. Apparently, major flare-ups, not unlike the current one, occurred in 2014, 2016, and July of this year. But what is different, what is driving this, is the stance taken by Turkey, a longtime backer of Azerbaijan and Armenia's historical nemesis. And you might remember that about 100 years ago, World War I, there was this horrific genocide of Armenians. And Turkey will never take responsibility for it.
And Israel doesn't want us to talk about it because there's only one Holocaust and genocide, and that's theirs, and everybody else is guilty of trademark infractions.
And so what Erdogan has been doing, America's frenemy, Ankara has been openly goading Baku into seizing the disputed lands by military force. Now, this situation is putting Russia in a rather delicate, shall we say, situation, as Moscow is a longtime ally of Armenia and has a military base there. But at the same time, Russia has been working with Turkey on a number of international issues, such as bringing peace to Syria. Now, over the past couple of days, the Kremlin and the Russian Foreign Ministry have been calling on all parties to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict to take a deep breath and return to negotiations. Now, there was another article also coming from antiwar.com. If you've never looked at this blog, please do yourselves a favor and do. And this article is authored by Major Danny Serson, USA retired. And he says, no dog in this fight. Nagorno-Karabakh's conflict isn't about us or Russia. And he notes that if there was any further proof needed that a utility diminishing NATO has all but reached its breaking point, on Wednesday, French President Emmanuel Macron blamed Erdogan's warlike rhetoric for removing Azerbaijan's inhibitions in reconquering Nagorno-Karabakh. Now, these ostensible NATO brethren have traded insults after their navies nearly came to blows off Libya's coast this July, each calling the other and perhaps the whole alliance brain dead. And Mike, maybe both are right.
They may well be right, but I mean, the dangerous situation here is that if Russia comes in to aid Armenia and Turkey comes in, and Turkey's already apparently running Azerbaijan's air force for them. You know, Turkey could invoke the NATO alliance on that side, Russia's on the other side, and we're really off to World War III.
And then there's that minor matter that in backing Turkey in Nagorno-Karabakh, America is siding with a government full of official genocide deniers about the Armenian genocide, World War I. And part of the reason for all those fraught ties between Ankara and Yerevan is that the Turks will not confess to displacing, starving, and killing a million or so Armenians during the First World War. And it's a deeply held non-culpability delusion. And Surgeon talks about in 2016, he was with a Turkish exchange officer in a strategy class at Fort Leavenworth, nearly tore his head off when he politely nudged this guy on the subject. Now, apparently, this Turkish exchange officer soon left the course and sought asylum in the U.S. after Erdogan stymied a suspicious coup attempt in July, fearing himself among the many military personas non grata in its wake. Now, the madman number 3 is Foggy Bottom.
Yes.
The boys in D.C. and their imaginary Russia monster friend. Finally, the world's family's crazy, curmudgeonly uncle, Uncle Sam, is more than a wild card at any time in 3+ decades of Nagorno-Karabakh strife. Washington styles itself the foremost honest broker for global conflicts, but it never really seems to do that. Ever heard of Palestine? I'm just saying. However, as Nagorno-Karabakh has shown, even the most tangential and distant discord belies America's professed straight dealing. Old Sam hasn't yet met a far-flung fracas from which he won't take sides, seeking personal benefit, accelerate, and counterproductively catalyze for quite some time. And if Washington catches a whiff of Russia, well, Mike, as you just said,
it's game on.
It's game on.
It's game on.
Yeah. The U.S. has long had its vulturous eyes on the region, especially after the Soviet Union's final collapse in 1991. It still does, maybe more now. And Surson mentions again when he was a student at the Army's Command and General Staff College in 2016-27, interestingly enough, way back then, all the officers focused almost exclusively on planning fictitious but highly realistic combat missions in the South Caucasus, where this area is. And the recurring scenario involved, get this, take a breath, defending Azerbaijan and incidentally its pipelines and Caspian Basin energy sources from a northbound attack from a breakaway statelet of ethnic Azeri Iranians. Planned, practiced, simulated offloading troops, tanks, and supplies at Georgia's Black Sea port through its capital, Tbilisi, of course, neatly bypassing Russian and Armenian territory, and staying clear of the Nagorno-Karabakh Third Rail, naturally, in the front lines in southern Azerbaijan. Come to think of it, in the war game, U.S. forces traced a rather reverse route of the corporate-crafted BTC Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan Turkey pipeline. Must have been a coincidence. It couldn't have been real, right?
No, of course not.
And Surgeon is saying, to be fair, his joint strategy instructor was a thoughtful, sensible guy who eschewed the mission's potential for grandiosity, always questioning ambitions, challenging assumptions, and emphasizing regional tensions and limitations. This is a realpolitik guy, whoever this teacher was.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, he was the person who truly piqued this writer's interest on Nagorno-Karabakh. That said, to my knowledge, he didn't choose the scenario. And the fact that similar war games infused the military world for a couple of decades speaks to the thinking in Washington. And while Armenia stayed tangential to the CGS training, it was quite clear that Azerbaijan was the protected protagonist, invaded by putatively Iranian factions, and of course the Russian menace was always in the air.
Gosh darn Russians.
Gosh darn Russians. All of which reflects an increasingly, if inconsistently, Azeri-friendly U.S. posture since the late 90s. Now, despite the real but often inflated influence of the Armenian-American lobby, consider it the Kardashian factor. Kim has been weighing in with a number of tweets, and so has her brother. The Washington winds have been blowing Baku's way for quite some time. As antiwar.com's own, the late Justin Raimondo, a rare NK watcher, explained during the first major post-truce explosion in 2016, U.S. policy in the South Caucasus is driven by two main motives: energy and the encirclement of Russia. The view from Moscow, and frankly the objective outer space, is clear. Since the late 1990s, the U.S. has geographically overt NATO eastward bound expansion, and diplomatically by denying legitimacy to Russia's sphere, or, say, in regional affairs caged in the bear, Washington would have gone far further if it's, at minimum, encouraged color revolutions along Russia's border, rose in Georgia, 2003, orange in the Ukraine, 2004, denim and tulip, Belarus and Kyrgyzstan, 2005, hadn't fallen flat, and that pesky Putin hadn't used force in 2008 to keep a rather aggressive little Georgia from joining NATO. But it's only gotten worse since then, as the entire bipartisan Washington establishment has donned fact-resistant Russia alarm goggles, particularly since Donald Trump's election. Mike, what do you think about that?
Well, that's true, and it really doesn't have that much to do with Donald Trump. It would have been the same thing with Hillary Clinton back in 2016.
I agree.
But the U.S. has gone back. The U.S. government, rather, has gone back to that Cold War mentality that you and I are old enough to remember what that was like originally.
Oh yeah.
And war is good for the war business, and they're all invested in the war business. And every time the U.S. gets itself into an economic mess, they get into a world war to try and get out of it, or at least distract from it. We have to take a break now for some commercials.
Okay.
And we'll be back with more Lady Claire after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. And before we turn the mic back over to the lovely Lady Claire here, we're getting word now that President Donald Trump is being sent to Walter Reed Medical Center, which strikes me as more of a precautionary thing now that he's tested positive for COVID-19. So, Lady Claire, take it away.
Right. I was going to continue. Apparently, pundits and politicians alike now view every global conflict through these Moscow-facing lenses. Moscow's always the bad guy.
If it isn't Iran.
Yeah.
No matter what's going on, it's Iran-linked. Iran-linked rioters are burning Portland. And
yes.
That kind of nonsense.
And then there's the money to follow.
Yes.
While its market sources and the U.S. supply situation have since diminished certain energy urgency, Washington seems stuck in the oil is everything past. It was that calculus which, in the late 1990s, helped push America toward Azeri-amenable positions in the Caucasus. The key was that BTC pipeline and the announcement by Papa Aliyev, who is the president of Azerbaijan, of the contract of the century. Apparently, strongmen speak similar slangs. That centennial deal amounted to an agreement with a consortium of oil companies, Amoco, Pennzoil, BP, Unocal, McDermott, Statoil, Lukoil, and the state-owned Turkish and Saudi enterprises, which granted them exclusive rights to Azerbaijan's oil and gas reserves. Adding insult to injury, it's another inconvenient truth of his career that in 1997, now environmentalist guru and then Vice President Al Gore presided over the White House signing ceremony of 4 additional Caspian Sea contracts between Aliyev Sr. and U.S. oil giants Exxon, Chevron, Mobil, Amoco, which merged with British Petroleum BP a year later. These deals were reportedly worth some $8 billion. Now, I don't know about you folks, but $8 billion still sounds like a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. Certainly a lot more than we have. So keep those donations to RBN coming in, folks, okay?
Please.
All right.
And as it relates to Nagorno-Karabakh, there's one fact to keep in mind. Armenia has no oil reserves to speak of. But I'm sure that nasty corporate cash would never sway the evenness of Honest Abe's successor in Washington. Only wait for it. The 2016 burst of Nagorno-Karabakh combat, what Raimondo dubbed the April's Fool War, was launched by Azerbaijan just as Aliyev the Younger was flying back from Washington. In that meeting, Secretary of State John Kerry used suspiciously Azeri-inflected language, calling for an ultimate resolution to the decades-old conflict. Kerry, maybe unwittingly, had the incendiary phrasing, which was absurd, and Justin Raimondo wrote, because the crisis has already been resolved, meaning facts on the ground supported a de facto independent Nagorno-Karabakh that accords with self-determination as the world as it is, as well as the world as it is. No doubt there are serious outstanding issues, and Baku has real grievances. The expelled NK Azeris have a right to return, and 7 additional Azeri majority-occupied districts should be handed back to Baku. Nevertheless, by pretending that there's a solution that involves peaceful reintegration with Armenian supermajority Nagorno-Karabakh into Azerbaijan, the U.S. all but greenlights Baku's resort to game-changing conquest. Now, they talk about the ghost of Woodrow Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the root, the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and the U.S. perceptions of it come down to the seemingly incompatible tension between two geopolitical and international legal principles: Armenian self-determination and Azerbaijani territorial sovereignty. So far, all attempts to square that circle in Moscow, Brussels, and various international bodies has failed miserably. Washington, though, has barely tried, especially since the energy-crazy late 1990s and the September 11th, 2001 attacks. And the writer makes the observation, funny, isn't it, how inconsistently various American administrations have applied the self-determination principle pronounced by President Woodrow Wilson in January of 1918. Not that Wilson evenly applied his own policy either. Just ask anti-imperialists like Mao or Ho Chi Minh how they fared at the Versailles Peace Conference.
About as well as Germany.
Oh, wow. Yeah, not good. And the Versailles Peace Conference planted the seeds that created the Second World War.
Yes.
Yeah. And in fact, from the first, contradictory commitment to popular sovereignty was an American trademark. You can talk to a Kurd or a Palestinian or some Kashmiris about that. And furthermore, since the fall of the USSR, the US and a compliant West treat the synthetic post-Soviet state borders, just called Azerbaijan, a Soviet fiction created by Stalin back in 1999. We're going to come back. We've got a break.
We've got to take another break. Welcome back to our show here, and Claire's going to finish her little story here, and then we're going to start taking phone calls. Yeah. Claire, take it away.
Okay. And here are a few examples of where the Wilson policy kind of got messed up. Let's talk about Kosovar Albanians. And they were possessed with remarkably similar arguments as the Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians, by the way, apparently deserved to carve an independent state out of Serbia. Now, in fact, the U.S. Air Force went to war on behalf of the rather checkered Kosovo Liberation Army in the late Clinton area. Yet, Russian-friendly Abkhazian or South Ossetia minorities who wanted out of post-Soviet Georgia, or even locals voting for autonomy or outside accession in Nagorno-Karabakh in 1991 or Crimea in 2014, nah. Uncle Sam said they had no inherent right to self-determine or choose which state they lived in. Their borders were alterable.
Were inalterable.
Inalterable.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I remember that, especially the one about Crimea.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and what hypocrisy we saw coming out of Washington, D.C.
And to popular sovereignty rights rests all and depends on which way the people in question are perceived to lean, east or west, so to speak. So inconsistency can still be consistent.
Yes.
And still, Russia doesn't deserve the baggage it gets regarding Nagorno-Karabakh, despite having a military base in Armenia and the country being a signatory to the Russian-led NATO facsimile Collective Security Treaty Organization, CESTO, Moscow isn't really close to Yerevan on this issue. While some claim Armenia has become a pawn in the Kremlin's geopolitical games because Russia convinced Armenia to scuttle an association agreement with the European Union and instead join the Eurasian Economic Union, a Moscow-led free trade bloc. Predictably, few Westerners bother to ask why Armenia should be tied to the EU. It's not even in Europe, Mike.
Yeah, no, it isn't.
Beside the lukewarm relationship is reciprocated. Indeed, Russia's responsible hedging behavior during the NK conflicts has, according to the director of a think tank in Yerevan, engendered a justified Armenian perception of questionable and unreliable backing from Russia in the event the current fighting expands. Now, that's understandable, given that the spokesman for the supposedly neo-imperial obsessed Kremlin said Monday that they're not even talking about military options.
No, they aren't.
Yeah. And what the concern is that Erdogan, with Turkey being a NATO member, will try to invoke Article 5 of the UN Charter.
Yes.
And that would put the U.S. with Turkey, with Azerbaijan, against Armenia, Russia, China, and heaven only knows who else in the mix.
Yes, that would be a mess.
Yeah, and that is what I am hoping President Trump is going to be able to prevent from happening.
It's the year 2020.
Yes,
okay.
I know.
All right.
But he's going to have to tell Erdogan very firmly, no, if you continue to attack Armenia, no, this will not be authorized by NATO. This is not going to happen, and this can't stand. Because if Erdogan thinks he's got a chance here, he's going to push Azerbaijan just as hard as he thinks he can get away with.
He's basically hoping Russia will make an overt move that he can run to NATO and say, we've been attacked.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's, we've got the phone.
Calls.
We've got the phone lines are open. Let's take some phone calls, starting with Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Wow, guys. Claire, you did a hell of a job on that. I mean, there's some serious research that went into what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I back in the 90s when there was a conflict going on there as well, a good friend of mine who was a Air Force Academy graduate and signed to Air Intelligence and had been teaching at the Air Force Academy, finally got his PhD in history, but he was sent over there as a UN observer, and we packed the U.S. contingent of the UN with a bunch of intel guys, military intel. And he spent 6 or 7 months over there. And as a matter of fact, he may be the guy that Danny Surgeon is talking about.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
At any rate, you hit the nail on the head, Claire, when you talked about the disconnect, the Wilsonian Treaty of Versailles disconnect between the spoils of war and real politics and borders versus self-determination, because, of course, Poland was created out of Silesia, for instance.
Yeah.
Czechoslovakia got the Sudetenland. Danzig was a free city and had a huge ethnic German population that wanted to reaffiliate with Germany. On and on, as you cited in the Balkans as well, that went down into the 90s is for conflicts. But it's always, we've always been ostensibly been anti-colonialists. But you're right about Ho Chi Minh too, right? Ho Chi Minh was planning on self-determination, but France was an ally and it was a colony, and so we went with France. It's been a cluster ever since then.
Yes.
And the principles are good, but they're only principles that you can take when you can, because it conflicts with real politics. But man, I just wanted to tell you, Claire, that was really, really good, and thank you for that. And that's it for me.
All right. Well, thank you for the phone call and thank you for the kind words. And we're going to switch over to David in Boston. Hello, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Hi, Claire.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Okay, Michael?
Yes, you're on the air.
Okay, because I can put my phone on mute if you have, but not on mute, but on take it off speaker. But Michael, I'm beginning to think that Claire taught Stephen Cohen everything that he knows.
What?
We'll take that as a compliment.
Thank you, I think, David.
Yeah, now let me ask you a brutally honest question, Michael. I'm
Yes.
sure it doesn't happen very often, but occasionally, when Claire has to scold you for misbehaving, does she finish saying after she's done scolding you? Does she say, "Now is that clear, Michael?"
No, I don't think she actually says that. You know,
Oh,
it's
okay.
usually a couple of whacks with the rolling pin and we're over here.
Marching orders and say, "Now you tell him what to do and give him his to-do list for the day and say, "Now is that clear, Michael?"
It doesn't quite work that way, no.
No, we've been together
Oh,
29 years, and I would say that ours is a reasonably gently evolved relationship. That's how I describe it.
I'm not henpecked, and I have Claire's permission to say so.
Stop it.
Okay.
Yeah. Mike, you know what I say? This battle of the sexes, when people get married, who's going to be the head of the family, and they fight about who's going to be the head of the family. You know,
Well, we take turns. We take turns. Now, seriously, what we have is we call the BBL, the big black line that goes down the middle of our household. And there are some parts of the household that Claire's very much in charge of. And there are some parts of the household that I'm very much in charge of, and we don't intrude onto each other's areas of responsibility and authority. I keep my hands off her desk unless I'm repairing her computer. She keeps her hands off my desk.
Yes.
And, you know, it's just a mutual respect thing. And it works really, really well.
Oh, great. I got scared for a second there. I thought you were going to tell me that you split the house. Claire gets the inside of the house, and you get the outside of the house.
No. It's not like that, David.
No,
Honest.
not at all. Not at all.
Honest.
But Mike, you know, I'll finish up by squeezing some callers before the show ends. But you know what I say, Mike, and I think it would solve a lot of problems. But you know, if a dispute arises between who's going to be the head of the house, the husband and the wife, and blah blah blah, what I always say, well, why don't you just compromise and be reasonable, and you can both be the head of the house. And when people say, well, how can you have two heads of the house? One's got to be the head. Come on, that's ridiculous. How can you have two heads of the house, two heads of the household? And I say, I don't know, but I've always heard that two heads are better than one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, that's basically how we work here, and we don't really have an idea of who's in charge of the house, and I don't think we ever have, to be very honest here. And, you know, so again, we don't compete with each other, which is a lesson I learned from watching my own parents destroy their marriage. And so I make a point of, you know, we don't play those games.
Right. Well, you know, you're true soulmates, obviously. So,
yes.
You know, so soulmates don't have those kind of power struggles and everything. But hey, listen, now, what else was I going to say? Oh, I'll give you maybe one laugh before I go here.
Okay.
What do you call it when President Donald Trump, when he's in these tough trade negotiations with President Xi Jinping, the president of China, right?
Okay, yes. Okay.
Xi Jinping, right?
Xi Jinping.
Is that the?
Yeah, you're close enough to country and Western.
Yeah, so they usually, sometimes they just call him President Xi, huh?
Yeah.
So where I'm going with this, when President Trump and President Xi have a trade dispute and everything, we call that a he said, she said problem.
Yeah.
He said, she said. Okay?
Doesn't quite work because it's actually, his first name is Xi with an X. So it's a he said, she said.
I think the X is pronounced like a Z, she. I think it's pronounced she. Xi Jinping.
I don't know, but just work on it and you know, come back to open mic night you know, sometime next week.
Okay. Well, okay. How about this one? I heard you talking about MSG. What do you get when you cross MSG with RBG? Ruth Bader Meinhof, she just died, but
Yeah, we know.
with oxygen, well, you get a double deadly dose of poison.
Okay, well, thank you. Next, and thank you for the phone call, David. We're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Hello, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
That was pretty. I'm not going there.
If I had a gong, I'd be ringing it.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's Xi Jinping.
Yeah.
Xi Jinping. And and guys, by the way, by 2030, China's GDP will be double of what we are. We'll be in number 3 because India is going to be number 2. That's just a topic for another day, another year. Well, Claire, I called in yesterday. It's a TLM, the tactical loitering munition. You saw that Harpy, right? A Harpy.
Yeah.
You guys have Claire, check out the French Spike. That's a missile France makes. They make a tactical loitering munition also. I mean, that's where we're at now. Isn't that nuts?
Yes.
Like, basically, it's like you said, a kamikaze drone that can fly around for extended periods that just flies to its target. That's kind of scary, don't you think? I mean, I don't know. I mean, they all have different types of kilograms of, explosives on it, but that's nuts. I mean, if anybody watch the videos, you're like, this is crazy. I mean, this is 2021 technology, guys.
Yes.
Gone are the days of the aircraft carrier, right, Mike? Like, it's
Yeah, I think they're definitely obsolete, and I don't think they'll survive the next World War. Dustin, are you there? I think we lost Dustin.
Yeah. We have to.
Let's switch over to Gary in Oklahoma. We lost Dustin. Let's switch over to Gary in Oklahoma. Hello, Gary. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes. Hello, Michael. A long-time listener, first-time caller.
Mm-hmm. We'll be gentle.
Wanted to. Okay, appreciate that. I'm sure Claire will nudge you if you're not.
Yes, she will.
I want to mention the diagnosis of Donald Trump getting the COVID. I think is actually kind of a mixed blessing. Not so much for him personally, but if he's not going to take control of the debate more by trying to redirect the narrative back to reality, if he's just going to play along with them and try to, just look like he's...
Well, at this point, they're not even sure they're going to have the next 2 debates. That it may just be the VP debate, between Pence and Harris.
As far as a mixed blessing, that's what I'm referring to. There may not be another presidential debate, and that actually may help him to some degree as far as not having to lower himself to essentially apologize for things that, like denouncing Proud Boys, which has nothing to do with anything, but
True.
It was just a matter of him looking weak and trying to appease the left crowd, which he's never going to win anyway, so what's the point? I think all he had to do was just say, look over to Biden and say, are you going to denounce BLM for their terrorism? And I think that would probably have ended that question right there, because they would have had some arguing and they would have just moved on, and he wouldn't have had to look weak like that. But if he's not going to fight harder, I think he should just acquiesce to just not having another debate.
Well, I disagree, because most people thought he won Tuesday's debate. But if it turns out that this particular infection is not all that bad, I'd like to see him back out there. Unfortunately, of course, we already know the debates are heavily rigged against him. That was certainly the case with Chris Wallace. We know the moderator for the next debate is a former Biden intern, who's tweeted out anti-Trump messages and said, no way should Trump be president. And that's why so many people are out there saying that Joe Rogan should be the moderator for the next debate.
I think that would be fun. I don't know if that will actually happen, because I think that.
No, I don't think it'll happen either. The media is desperate to maintain control over the political discussions of the country. They're failing miserably. Right now, polls are showing 60% of Americans do not trust corporate media. And we're just trying to get more of them to come over and learn how to trust Republic Broadcasting and whatreallyhappened.com.
Oh, absolutely. Because I used to watch C-SPAN in the morning. Their 3-hour show from like 6 to 9 a.m. Central Time. I think it's like 5 to 8 Eastern. But Steve Scully is the future moderator if the next debate takes place. He's a host that sometimes does show the morning show. I know he does a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but his bias is obvious and it won't go well.
No, it won't. Gary, I got to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials. We'll be back with the last segment of today's program after these few words. Welcome back to our show here, last segment of our program on this Pauhana Friday, and we've closed the phone lines because Claire wants to finish up this story about Armenia, Azerbaijan.
Yes. This writer concludes by stating, make no mistake, on its merits, Nagorno-Karabakh has not and need not be a classic proxy war. This isn't Libya or Syria, though Turkish and or American interventions could help make it so. And amazingly enough, our alleged favorite bad guys, Russia and Iran, I would love to see, by the way, the Hermitage at St. Petersburg, I would love to see Tehran.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so either. But they have generally, Mike, shown incredible restraint in Nagorno-Karabakh, past and present. The former has quickly called on both sides to immediately halt fire and begin talks to stabilize the situation. One might assume that the latter would back its co-religionist Shia Muslims in Azerbaijan, or conversely, that Iran, pushed ever closer to Moscow by U.S. enmity, would tack towards Russia's treaty-aligned Armenians. Yet, Tehran rarely has come down strongly on either side. And few observers, even among the more aggressive Iran hawks, realize that the Islamic Republic is hardly a homogenous state because 20% of Iran's people are ethnically Azeri, which at 10 to 15 million souls is greater than the total population of Azerbaijan. Yet, lest one assume that that instantly translates into support for Baku, in fact, Persian-dominated Tehran tends to fear its occasionally restive Azeri minority and resents its northern neighbors' amenity to the Israeli encirclement of their embattled republic. Furthermore, Iran, like Armenia and mostly Russia, was notably excluded from the U.S. organized Azeri oil consortium.
Well, that's definitely going to leave them less than cheerful.
Yeah, and I would just like to say in closing, everyone, please this weekend, please be very kind to each other. Be kind to the people you care about. Be kind to the people who are kind of a pain. You know what I mean. And
I refuse to name names.
No, I refuse to. But I'm saying just a little kindness, a lot more. And please use your time to exercise a little more compassion. America is so on the brink right now and so marginalized and angry at each other. And we need to pull back from that before we can be the America that can move forward as one country. And that, I think, is what we need to think about in the run-up to the elections. We need to be able to have intelligent, respectful conversations.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and when dialogue breaks down, you're inviting trouble. It's like the Kennedy brothers used to say, when peaceful revolution becomes impossible, violent revolution becomes inevitable. Okay, there is music here. Stay tuned for Steve Elkins. He's taking over the microphone from John Stadmiller, and of course is going to bring his medical expertise to the story about Donald Trump and COVID-19. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We will not be able to make it without your help. We'll be back on Monday. Aloha, America.